Has anyone here ever done a personality test? I unashamedly have tried every single one that exists, from the MBTI to the Enneagram to all the cheesy BuzzFeed ones. I grew up in an extremely diverse environment, which led to me finding difficulty in linking my acquired values to my cultural values. And I took refuge in the one consistent personality type that those tests were giving me, and I pledged allegiance to my Hogwarts house. See, those things may feel like a fun thing to do, but we gravitate towards them because we want to define ourselves. The thing is, identity isn't some two-dimensional figure or some single-layered thing. It is a complex compilation of our socioeconomic position, our ethnicity, gender, experiences and memories, etc., all intersecting in one individual. And treating people as nothing more than a representative of one social group harms them by condensing their individuality, and it prevents us from empathizing with them as we don't see our similarities. Basically, people's perception of us and what they expect from us affects the way we act. If people see us as a representative of a minority, we are expected to act angry at all the injustices our minorities have to endure. However, the fact remains that this might not be what we identify with the most. We may be more concerned with another aspect of our personality, like if you have a passion for environmental activism, for example. Boxes stem from a labeling theory from sociology that states that people come to identify and behave in ways that reflect how people view them and how they label them. And this is all in an effort to grapple with the complexity of the world around us. But even with the emergence of the conceptualization of spectrums, which seems like a less constricting way of identifying where we fall on a scale, for example, political orientation, it still largely only makes space for people on the extremes and dismisses people who fall in the center of the spectrum or who don't fall anywhere on that spectrum. Humans have been practicing social and cognitive categorization throughout their evolution, so it's very easy to mix our individuality and our group membership. This can be quite a complex concept, so here's an example. You have a man and a woman, Sarah and Adam, conversing about the weather. Sarah gets up saying that she needs to go complete her assignment for a women's studies class. Adam then interjects saying that if there exists a women's studies class, there has to be a men's studies class too. Sarah disagrees, saying that women are still largely mistreated and ignored by society. Here we have two individuals who started off as themselves, as Sarah and Adam, now being transformed into representatives of their respective social groups. Sarah now represents the female population and Adam represents the male population, and they see each other as such, not as Sarah and Adam. Their individual identity is no longer at the forefront. This system has a potential for a lot of societal damage. The box theory creates a space which is labeled a specific gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. But people who cannot fulfill the box's requirements are shunned and completely shut out. Even people who do meet the requirements feel as though they're not fully expressing their identities. In some cases, this can even amount to imposter syndrome, where an individual is under so much pressure to behave the way society expects them to, that they develop an internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. It really is a lose-lose situation, and the effects on self-esteem alone are sizable. You might have heard about the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, commonly known as the MBTI, which categorizes us into one of 16 types, which comes from a combination of our score on 4 different spectrums of cognitive functions. These 100 questions we are getting asked are supposed to be assessing our nature, extroverted, introverted, sensing and intuitive, etc. Now imagine your chances of being employed being dependent on this quiz. Well, this is a reality with Fortune 100 companies, of which 89 use personality testing at some stage of their employment process in order to filter out the so-called unemployable types, all based on a 15-minute test. There is a lack of awareness that although the personal and professional parts of our identity do overlap, they are not one and the same. It's simply unfair. Again, an idea of a homogenized identity persists. Our responses to situations in daily life are assumed to be directly linked to how we behave in a work environment. We as people are all so interwoven that we are inevitably bound to have something in common with every single person that exists. You and your neighbor who come from completely different cultural backgrounds may agree on your political views or may have visited the same country and come out with similar experiences. Once we understand the complexity of our identity, it will make it easier for us to empathize with other people and connect and relate to each other, as we're about to intersect somewhere. Even better, we can use this new perception in order to dismantle implicit biases. Implicit biases are a biological and social product of a function called cognitive heuristics, which is basically a mental shortcut that allows us to think less by forming assumptions. Those assumptions can then help us make decisions faster, and a simple example of that would be if you had gone to a restaurant you've been to before and you've opened the menu and you are deciding what to eat. Your instinct would lead you towards picking a dish that is either familiar to you or something you've tried at the restaurant before. It's as simple as being scared of trying something new. See, this irrational fear is an overgeneralization. But those implicit biases can manifest in a discrimination against minorities in very extreme cases. A prevalent example would be the discrimination the Asian community has suffered as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where people are attacking them based on their race, while completely discrediting the fact that a good proportion of them are frontline healthcare workers, which are helping nurse the country back to health. This is yet another case of lack of knowledge fueling racist rhetoric. The important thing to remember is that everyone has implicit bias. It is rather a matter of being conscious of its existence and a drive to wanting to dismantle it. That being said, it doesn't mean all of us are bad people. Bias isn't inherently bad. It's simply something biological that helps us process a lot of information being thrown at us all at once, by creating those generalizations. However, beware, because bias could turn discriminatory very quickly when those overgeneralizations are negative and they're being applied to large groups of people and they help you form prejudices. It is a common belief that the political unrest we're living through today is a result of people refusing to listen to each other's experiences. They refuse to see the nuance of their identities, which leads to us seeing each other in black and white. Seeing each other in black and white will lead us to form those biases and will reinforce the divide. The good news is that the fix is relatively easy, but it does start with us realizing that there is a problem to begin with. After awareness comes the stage of unraveling those assumptions. It's somewhat like unraveling wool. It is a lot of work and it will take a lot of time. Next, be inquisitive. Ask why questions specifically. Why does a culture dress the way they do? Why do they celebrate the way they do? Learning more about another person's culture will both help you find similarities between yourself and them and will help you empathize with them more as people. Of course, none of this is possible if we only surround ourselves with people that are very similar to us. So I have a challenge for you. Try surrounding yourself with people who you consider very different to you. Listen to their experiences and increase contact with them. When we start to see our identities as complex and multidimensional, the basis for the hatred and bigotry will vanish. And without a base, the hate cannot persist. It takes away from the complexity of who we are to define and limit our options of identity. There are infinite possibilities of who we could be and infinite possibilities of how we could coexist with each other.